Hey, everybody, and welcome to this second session of our series From Anxiety to Confidence: How to Win the Interview Process. I'm David McIntyre, and I'm glad to be here with you again. And we've got a lot to cover today. We've got a lot to talk about. In our last session, we talked about the interview process, and we asked and talked about why interviews can feel so overwhelming, and we talked about the anxiety that tends to come with that. And we finally figured out that the real answer to anxiety and that sense of being overwhelmed in the interview process, the answer is preparation. And so we began to look at some specific steps to help you to prepare for your interview. Now we're going to add the next layer on top of that, and we're going to talk about two things today. The first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to tell you the truth about what interviews are designed to measure, and not just designed to measure, but what they actually measure. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about what your interviewers are actually listening for so that you know how to best communicate during that time frame. The second thing we're going to talk about is we're going to solve the translation gap. There is a difference between what you say sometimes and what the interviewer hears. And the only way that we can bridge that translation gap is by getting on the same page and communicating in a way that helps the interviewer better understand where you're coming from. Now, there's a reason why there's a translation gap, and I can't wait to get into that with you. And then there's always a solution. Because here's what happens: you know you're capable, but in their interview, it doesn't always land. And so today, we're going to fix that. As usual, I'm not here by myself, I've got help, starting with the illustrious Lynn Nestor.
Hi, everybody.
And then I've also got my good friend and fellow professional, Philip Rich, is with me today as well.
Hey guys.
So we're digging into this concept of the reality check first and talking about what real interviews really measure. And so, I guess we should start with what people get wrong about interviews. Most people walk into interviews thinking they're testing whether I'm good enough. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That's not what's happening at all. You see, interviews are about risk, not perfection. From your employer's point of view, the interview process is risky for a couple of reasons. Number one, there is a financial cost that's connected to interviewing you. At the least, somebody who is an employee of the company is spending their time away from their regular, necessary day to day work that's involved in interviewing you. That could be an HR person, it could be a manager, it could be someone else within the organization. They have a financial cost to that interview. It also takes time, and time, as you hear said so often, is money. There's often advertising that's involved in it. There's pre-work. Somebody had to update that job description. They had to vet the different applications that came in. All of that is a part of the process. And then they had to spend time determining who's going to actually be interviewed. And then afterwards, who's going to ultimately get the job. So you can see the financial and time impact for that organization. And so then you can see why a bad hire affects the team, it affects the manager and the overall company results. So it's important that if you're going to interview somebody, that you want to get it right. So the interview isn't asking, are you amazing? It's asking, are you a safe bet? I'm going to throw it to Lynn for a minute. Lynn, what's your thought on that? Are you a safe bet?
I think that expresses it so clearly. I think to be a safe bet means that you're going to be a person that's dependable. It means you're going to be a person that can work with other people in the department, who doesn't have to have a ton of hand holding. Safe bets put the interviewer at ease to safely recommend you to the department that you would work. So safe bets huge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, the even just think about your own life. A lot of times we're wired to do what's safe, not necessarily what's risky.
Hmm.
And so when we do, we will often take, for example, the path of least resistance. Why? Because that path is safer. It seems like it makes more sense. And for
Right.
that person who's interviewing you, they're looking at the same thing when they're looking at you. As I look over your qualifications, as I look over the things about you, and even as I'm connecting you and determining how I feel personally about you, all of it is risk reward involved. Risk reward involved. So let's talk about the three unspoken questions that come up during the interview. And they're almost, I'd say, almost every interview, no matter the role, there is a quiet sense. And I'm not saying they ask these questions directly, but these are the quiet questions that are in the back of the interviewer's mind that they're
Mhm.
asking you. And let's dig into them. The first one is, you know, um, can I trust this person? And we can look at all three of them really quickly. Can I trust this person? Will this person represent us well? And will this person need excessive management? That's a that's a huge one in the back end of it. Let's look at each one just briefly. Number one, trust isn't about being liked. Does your when you think about how you're answering the questions that are being asked of you, there needs to be that communication of trust that underlies your answers. In other words, do your
Mhm.
answers make sense together? I personally believe that, and others might feel differently about this. I don't think anybody in this room is. The worst thing you can do in an interview is lie about your experience or something that's happened, because
Mhm.
inevitably that stuff pops back up later in unexpected ways. And then you either have to fess up to, well, it wasn't exactly like that, or you have to continue trying to carry out this lie. And inevitably, it comes out in your skill sets and your ability to do certain things that you really can't do the thing that you're being asked to do. So you want to make sure that you're 100% trustworthy. Do your stories line up with your resume?
Mhm.
So your resume says one thing, you're telling stories about a completely different time, and none of those places that you mentioned, none of the situations or skill sets that you mentioned go back to your resume. People want to connect the dots. They want to see the information that you've provided them connected with the stories and information that you're giving them. That way they can always know, okay, I'm on the same page. I'm in the right place. This sounds good. And finally, do you sound like someone who follows through? You know, when you're giving your stories, do you come up and say, well, we had this project once and three of the people quit. The rest of us didn't know what to do. So, we were just kind of stuck at that point. Doesn't necessarily sound like a person who follows through. So, you want to make sure that you're able to communicate that. And just remember, confidence isn't loud here. It's about being steady. It's
Mhm.
about being able to consistently communicate steps that you took to resolve issues, to gain trust, to connect the dots on your resume. That's a huge one. Let's look at the second one. Will this person represent us well? Philip, you want to tackle this one?
In terms of when you're being interviewed, there is always this kind of constant assessment going on in the mind of the interviewer. And it's one of those things that all of us do it as human beings. When we're interacting with somebody for the first time, not only are we listening to what they're saying, but we're also kind of assessing them as a person, if we're being honest. We kind of, uh, the brain is an association machine. It loves to take in information and then find out what category does this fit in. And so as the interview is listening to you, they're also kind of saying, okay, they're probably an extrovert, they're probably this, they're probably that, and they're kind of getting a feel for you as you're communicating your answers to them as well. So how you communicate is a big it can be a big asset or a big liability depending
Mhm.
on the way that you approach it. You have to be clear in what you say, clear in how you communicate. Don't uh, don't think that it's a bad thing to take your time with your answers. A lot of times that can project confidence when you're not just constantly, rattling off at 1,000 miles an hour, because most of the time, if you communicate that way, it does signal a bit of nervousness. So how you communicate, speaking at a pace that's, very even, I think is important. Also, how you speak
You
about,
know,
oh,
Phil,
sorry.
I was going to just throw this in real quick. I call that rambling to an answer.
Ah, yeah.
When you jump in and you just start talking, and you're talking while in your head you're figuring out what you're actually trying to say,
Yes.
which is already a task to have your mouth going and your brain thinking at the same time.
And you're hoping and praying your brain catches up with your mouth eventually, right? So,
Right. And you hope you kind of curve your way in your conversation over to the final answer that you really want to give,
yeah,
rather than taking that moment to pause
yeah,
and then
Mhm.
say, that's a great question. Hmm.
So,
yeah.
can I throw something out there? There is a tool to help you communicate well, and it's an organization called Toastmasters. They have a portion of their meeting where you do table topics. You are given 1 to 2 minutes to answer a random question in front of other people. What this does is help you think on your feet, to keep your mouth closed just for a second, organize your thoughts, and then begin to speak and be done within 1 to 2 minutes. It's an excellent tool if you're not confident. It's an excellent tool if you just don't have experience doing this. So I would suggest, if you're looking at this and thinking, represent them well, I don't even speak well, there's a tool that you can employ to be able to do that. It's the least expensive one that I've ever found to help me professionally.
and
That's
and
awesome.
Toastmasters can be found locally
Mhm.
throughout most every community across the
It's
country.
worldwide.
So, yeah, it's worldwide. So you
Mhm.
should be able to find a Toastmaster somewhere near or close to where you are. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Phil.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, and for the second bullet, how you speak about past roles, you definitely want to try to keep things on the positive side as much as possible, even if you didn't have a very positive experience with a past role. Try to find the
Mhm.
good points you can focus on, because what you don't want is to go in there and disparage previous employers in front of a potential employer. That can be a signal that they might take and go, what if they do that with me? What if they do that with our
Mhm.
company? So
Right,
yeah,
right.
definitely want to steer clear of that. And then also how you handle uncertainty. This is a big one, because you want to project confidence even in times when you may not be certain what the answer might be. You want to at least have the attitude or approach it with the mindset of,
Mhm.
we can figure this out.
Right.
There is an answer. I just need to work to find it. If you have that type of approach, then you'll have a much more positive disposition that they can pick up on. And like it says there on the slide, it says they're imagining you in meetings and with clients on Slack or in conflict. They're thinking about you in those scenarios. How would you respond? And the best way, I believe, would be to do your best to maintain a calm demeanor as much as possible. It doesn't mean you
Mhm.
have to be boring or sound dull, but just in terms of not showing too much susceptibility to being emotionally way over here or way over there. Just show
Mhm.
that you have a bit of stability in how you approach things, even in the way that you answer the questions.
Yeah, and I would say that's even the case in the interview. If you're
Sure.
sweaty, nervous, you're anxiously looking around the room, you doing different things that are communicating anxiety for the interviewer watching you, that may cause them to have some concern. So you
Yeah.
want to always keep that steady rein. If you need to have something in your hand that you can hold and squeeze, but that's not visible, that will help you, that you can squeeze that little thing down in your hand to help you when you feel things are getting tense or having a moment, you do that. But you take every opportunity to demonstrate that you're engaged, that you're cool, calm, and collected, regardless of how the situation or circumstance breaks down.
That's
Mhm.
good, David. Body language definitely is key because it does communicate a lot. And when you think about it, if you're externally fidgeting and a little bit unstable, it could communicate, okay, they're not sure of their answers, they're not sure of what they're saying right now, that type of thing. Even as I do this webinar or other things that I do, I try to pay attention to my body language as well. Like I'm trying not
Mhm.
to, and I'm a person that does naturally fidget a lot, so I have to be very, very conscious of that. So just keep in mind, like as you're speaking and so forth, just try to maintain, like anchor yourself physically,
Mhm.
so that you're not, looking like maybe like a squirrel jumping jumping around a lot. So
Mhm.
Yeah, and just remember
And
that question at the end. Go ahead, Lynn. Oh yeah.
I was just going to say, our body language often is tied to the way we answer a question. We're fidgeting a lot when our mind is not settled. So if you
yeah,
take that moment to think, you can settle your mind and your body all at once to answer these questions.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
yes, sir. And then that last question there: will this person make our lives easier or harder? That's what the employer is possibly thinking when they're interviewing you. Okay, do I see this person as a problem walking through the door, or do I see them as somebody who can add to
Mm.
the team and add to what we're doing?
Mm. And let me tell you, that's a moment of decision right here, because
Yes,
literally nobody's hiring for somebody to make their job harder or to
absolutely.
make their work harder. You're
Yep.
going into last week we talked about finding and identifying the problem that you solve in the organization. You're going
Mhm.
in there as a tool to alleviate pressure, to alleviate problem. If you alleviate the problem, but yet you bring another type of problem to the table, then it's over. I'll give you a great example using football. There's a player for a local team, the Atlanta Falcons, who had a dynamic season. He had 10 sacks, part of the most the Falcons have ever had before, and he was lauded for being so great. But now he's just been arrested in Miami. He ran from the police, crashed his car, crashed into another car, and
Oh
did
boy.
some
Mhm.
other things. And so now the team is looking at getting rid of him. Why? Because it's now instantly become harder to keep him. So on one side, you have a tremendous skill set. On the other side, you have personal things and other items that come into play that make it very difficult to work with you. Therefore, the organization decides I can find someone else who's qualified with fewer of the distracting elements.
Mhm.
And so you have to be mindful of that. Your job is to make things easier, not harder.
Right.
And then
And
if we look,
wanna
oh yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to throw one thing in. We talked last week about preparation and knowing the company. I think it's important to also know what a similar dress code is for that, because when you walk in the door, and we'll probably talk about this more later, but that sets a stage for how comfortable you might be in that environment and how comfortable with, I mean, I don't want to walk into a top 10 accounting firm, let's say, and have on pajama pants and a top. You know, it just depends. There could be places where that would be appropriate, but be aware that you're representing the total package. That's how they're looking at you, to be the total package for them.
Mhm. That's good, Lynn. Thanks. And let's run through this last set. And will this person need excessive management? And we're asking the employers listen for self-awareness.
Mhm.
Are you self-aware? Do you have a good sense of, you know, some people would say that,
Mhm.
for example, when it comes to humor, if you're a little bit self-deprecating in your humor, some people say you're more self-aware, you're more engaged. You don't think too much about yourself, or you don't think you're beyond a certain point. You're aware
Mhm.
of what's going on around, and you consider those things. You don't necessarily put yourself ahead of those things. You don't necessarily put yourself behind them, but you kind of have a good sense of right sizing your place within the
Right.
context of things going on around you. They
That's
want to
good.
know that you bring problem solving to the table. And a lot of that will come out in your stories as we
Mhm.
talk about that in just a minute. You'll communicate some of the places where you were able to problem solve and help to resolve an issue. They want to hear that. And then they want to hear ownership, that you took authority, you took responsibility for something and saw it through to the end, or you acted as the owner and just went ahead and did X, Y, or Z that was within the confines of what you're allowed to do within your job. It's not ownership when you said, well, nobody else is going to do it, so I might as well. That's not the same kind of ownership as when you take a certain level of responsibility and authority to make good decisions that are within the confines of the
Mhm.
rules of the work that you were doing elsewhere. And just remember, they're not expecting you to know everything. What they're expecting to find out is that you can think critically, that you can learn, and
Mhm.
that you take responsibility for the things that are going on around you. And let me just tell you, um, all three of those are equally as important, but the
Mhm.
ability to learn is a big deal because at every new job that you're going to, you're always going to have to learn something, even if it's just the culture of the organization. So your ability to learn and adapt is going to be an important piece of that
Right.
puzzle. Any final thought in this section, guys, before we go?
No, it's good to go.
I think another big thing to talk about when it comes to the interview process is this issue of being qualified. And the reality is, being qualified isn't enough. And I don't, here's a hard truth that I hope will actually help you. Most people who apply for a job are qualified. I mean,
Mhm.
literally in the environment that we're in right now, where some people would say jobs are scarce, but the reality is that jobs aren't scarce. It's the types of jobs that people are willing to do. Because in other places, there's scarcity in the number of people applying and wanting to do certain jobs or who have the skill sets for those jobs. But I
Mhm.
looked at a job a little bit ago for instructional designers, and by the time I had looked at it, there had already been over 100 applications. And then
Wow.
as I started looking, I started noticing job after job after job in this particular area. There was over 100 applications that had already been put in for that position. So the reality is that you're an instructional designer. I'm an instructional designer. We probably have most of the same basic qualifications. We know how to use the same tools. We are probably using the same tool at what we're doing. Just think about it. If you're going in for a job as a receptionist or a customer service representative, do you know that most people know how to use Microsoft Office? That's not a new skill for anybody. So for you
Right.
to put that down on your resume, while it is important that you put it on your resume so people know that you have that skill, know that you're not the only one.
Mhm.
So remember, you're not competing against people for skill alone. You're competing on clarity, you're competing on communication, and you're
Mhm.
competing on predictability. In other words, the ability to predict how you will work and the consistency that you'll work in. Thoughts, guys?
Well, my first thought is the three of us have worked together before. We know the skill sets that we have. We know that we're each qualified. If we're applying for the same job, it's not going to depend on that, just exactly as you said, because we all do instructional design, we do training, and each one of us, we're good at what we do. But if I cannot communicate what I've done in a classroom, if I can't communicate how I developed a training piece to overcome an issue, then I will not get the job, though maybe I'm more qualified, who knows? But I won't get the job because I was not able to communicate that to whoever interviewed us.
That's so good, Lynn. I mean, the reality is that two people with the same degree get different results.
Mhm.
One candidate feels easy, another one feels risky. And
Mhm.
that is all at the decision of the interviewer or interviewers, manager, a panel of interviewers, an HR person. Really, so much of the interview process comes down to what you communicate and how you make that interviewer feel about you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal because
Yeah.
they can practically get a sense of your 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 skills, but then when it comes to getting a sense of who you are and what you're able to do, that is very much a feel thing.
Mhm.
And you're going to have to work to help them to feel great about you.
Right.
That's good.
Mhm.